Welcome to the FootBridge Energy Leadership Series, where energy leaders build what powers tomorrow.
Welcome back to another episode of the FootBridge Energy Leadership Series. Today, I'm joined by Luke Brett, the head of marketing and event director at the EPC Show, America's largest event dedicated to energy projects. Luke, thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Luke. Always good to meet a fellow Luke.
That's right. Yeah, I was excited to host another Luke today, so looking forward to getting into it. So I know we got a chance to meet, back in June. I was fortunate enough to attend the show down in Houston this year and just had an absolutely great time. Tons of learning, tons of networking, tons of exciting things going on at your event, and looking forward to next year's edition as well. But maybe we could back up a little bit and just start with, what led you guys to launch the show after your success in other events previously?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And I'm really glad you came to the event and enjoyed yourself. Well, to give a history, the event was originally an event dedicated to LNG export projects, because there's obviously been such a swell of them, and that was roughly 3 years ago. Then we added a additional conference stage on hydrogen and ammonia, because there was particularly then quite a lot of hype about that. And then for this year's edition that you went to in June, we decided to kind of add in other kind of key energy projects. So looked at midstream, we looked at petrochemicals and refining and sustainable aviation fuels, as well as the LNG export, which is the kind of anchor of our event. And then also the hydrogen and ammonia stage. And the whole idea basically is our core audience is it's a play on words, right? The EPC show, it's an energy project show, but also our core audience is a lot of them, the EPCs and the project owner operators. And these guys are obviously working on multiple asset classes, but bringing a lot of those solutions and the supply chain along with them. And because it's all kind of happening right now in America, particularly in the Gulf, we really thought like there's a real gap to create an event that's dedicated for the kind of project managers and project engineers. And yeah, we've just grown and doubled down year on year off the back of that. And we've been really pleased by the audience's response to what we put together.
Yeah, personally, I was thrilled to get connected to this event because we, on the staffing side, work primarily with people like project managers, project engineers, project controls at EPC companies, or on the owner side, across from plants to midstream to, you name it, in the power sector, or gas, renewables, nuclear. And so this event really tailored for the right audience for us to go network and to learn just about the challenges. But I know you touched on this a little bit in your last response, but like, what are the key needs that you're trying to really fill with this event? And maybe, who else in the industry do you think could benefit from hearing about this event?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think with us, in terms of who really could benefit from it, we kind of talked about obviously project managers and project engineers, but also critically for us is that we're seeing there's so many great innovators, and these kind of players are fit in our exhibition. And they obviously are hungry for the opportunities to kind of display the cool technologies and solutions that they have to, the project owner operators that are constructing these $1 billion plus facilities. And so it gives, them a real good opportunity to be in front of those kind of project engineers, these key new turnkey solution providers that are churning out amazing new software or hardware or anything basically. So that's obviously a really core audience for us. And as we're kind of been following, where are the big project engineers, where are the big projects, where the EPCs looking for next year, we are adding a kind of a new conference stream, which is specific to power generation, particularly gas power projects that are, really building the projects that are going to be powering the data centers that are, really growing rapidly across the States. There's an interesting marriage happening between Silicon Valley and Texas, really, with all these power projects that are coming online to serve data centers. So that's another area that we're just looking to add to support the kind of growth of energy projects in America and America's energy dominance. So we're really excited about that. And
Yeah.
again, we're just kind of mirroring where there's projects, we'll look to create a conference opportunity within the EPC banner.
So you keep answering my next question, so you're doing a great job here. My next question was why Texas and why now? But one of the things that maybe I wasn't anticipating as much in this conversation, but I'm glad you brought up, is also Silicon Valley. So it's interesting to hear that you guys are already planning for that conversation. Curious if there's anything, there that you guys are going to be talking about.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, we've always done this event in Houston. We are in the George R. Brown, which if anyone goes to Houston conference, they know it's the George R. Brown, right? It's a great location downtown. And yeah, just to quickly go back on why Texas obviously is just, we're looking at the landscape at the minute, and there's a lot of bullishness. There's so many projects being announced. In terms of the data centers specifically, there's more projects announced in Texas from the data that I've read recently, and we kind of published a report on this, than anywhere else across the country. So as I said, there's that kind of interesting marriage being formed, and particularly on the data center side of things, got some exciting conversations going on with some hyperscalers. So we're very confident they'll be at the event for next year. We've already confirmed NVIDIA as well, who are present as well for this year's event. And people are always interested to hear what they're doing, both from the energy procurement side of things, because these guys are hungry, right, for power, but also obviously the solutions that they're kind of implementing, particularly as this is an event on constructing projects and they've got a lot of digital solutions. So that's a really kind of interesting angle for us. So you're talking about Silicon Valley, it's a two-part, there's the one is the power procurement, which obviously they're hungry, these projects, as I mentioned, but a lot of these companies are the most innovative companies in the world, right? So they have solutions that can help make energy projects faster. So we're talking to a lot of these companies, and they're asking us, hey, who do you want us to send? Is it more on the power procurement side of things or on the solution side of things? We're often saying both, because that's very valuable to the audience. And I've been fortunate enough to be researching power generation for the last couple of weeks and months, and I'm sure you can agree, Luke, it's all the rage right now, the power generation projects to serve data centers, and how this market's forming, and seeing demand go up 3%. If you think about how much that is in gigawatts per annum, 3% is ginormous across the state. So it's not going to slow down, basically, these projects, and the figures and the gigawatts. Yeah, pretty eye-watering. I'm sure you can agree when you see how big these numbers are after the power generation industry has kind of been quite flatlining for the previous decade. So a lot of people are reskilling, going back to power generation projects, and I overall just think it's pretty exciting. And yeah, we'll definitely have to watch this space to see how many of these start coming online.
Yeah, I think it's a good segue maybe into some of the industry challenges. And I know you guys put together some research and reporting. I've seen some of that post-event. We've talked about it a couple of times. A few of the areas, regulatory, supply chain pressures, bankability. And then here at FootBridge, one of the areas that we really get into is obviously workforce skills. You mentioned a lot of people coming back. We have a ton of opportunities in the construction, commissioning, that side of gas projects, et cetera, midstream, bringing gas from one place to another, or, T&D, power gen. So maybe talk about some of the stuff that you guys do there with just how you bring insights to people in between events, and some of the things that maybe are interesting for you to touch on.
For sure. I think it's good timing, because we're just having a meeting on this, because as I mentioned, we've got kind of multiple conference stages under this EPC Show banner. So it's always quite interesting to see certain challenges. I mean, the whole reason why we're putting this event together is because there are a lot of challenges that are faced across communities. So whether that's a petrochemical project, or it's a gas project, or even a clean power project, one of them, and the one that you kind of solve, and is obviously the workforce area. And that's such an interesting dynamic and challenge, particularly where, aging is a risk. Always love hearing what a lot of these players are doing, and in terms of engaging younger people as well into projects in a very competitive landscape. and engaging with community colleges. I think there's some really good things that key major owner operators and EPCs are doing to kind of encourage the next generation of engineers, which is integral to get all these gigawatts get announced, but you need the people behind it to really put the yards in to get them developed. So that's a huge challenge that we're seeing come up across the board, whether that's, as I said, certain industries that, maybe are facing more of an aging workforce, or kind of more clean power projects, not knowing the skills early enough. Yeah, there's so much that can be going on there. It's a huge challenge that we're kind of always whittling down onto what is the real core meat of the challenge. Another area, obviously, is permitting and regulatory reforms and consistency across states, and kind of navigating that. So again, this is a challenge that kind of falls across the board. I think particularly on LNG, though, we're seeing obviously a huge swell of projects be announced that are going to be moving, through to the FID and had a lot of regulatory approvals. So we've been covering that quite a lot. You almost can't keep up with the amount of projects being announced. So that's another more of an opportunity, but it is almost a challenge as well. So how to kind of gear the supply chain around that. And then another huge challenge, particularly as I'm looking at gas power generation, and we do LNG a lot, is obviously these turbine shortages. So I know a lot of people are talking about this. There's a lot more solutions coming out, but yeah, this is a big area. We're seeing kind of new partnerships, or more longer term partnerships, or cross project partnerships, just to ensure like a reliable turbine supply. Even players are obviously ordering in turbines pre-FID, which is just to kind of really shore up that their project has the gas turbine equipment ready. And it's creating obviously some, people said, some say it's obviously a clear seller's market. Others are kind of saying obviously there's some advantages in the sense, if you think outside of the box in terms of the planning and scheduling has to be extra rigorous, so that helps kind of the project push along. But that's obviously a huge challenge for the sector, because gas is reliability to power obviously the data centers and all the LNG export projects and everything else. So that's a huge area that we're seeing coming up a lot. And then maybe another challenge to the deceleration of, or refocusing of hydrogen and ammonia projects. The tax credits and incentives have kind of been rolled back slightly. So it's how is the industry kind of addressing those? I think there's still a lot of projects progressing. The Hydrogen Council recently came out and did a report that was maybe more positive than a lot of the headlines on the amount of investment going into hydrogen projects across North America. So maybe it's not all doom and gloom, but yeah, that's an area where we're realizing that kind of a lot of projects maybe aren't going to progress past the FID stage that were announced. So there's some challenges there, but there are still going to be some projects that are ongoing. So pinpointing where the opportunities are basically is a big challenge for certain players in the supply chain.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's usually never as rosy as you think it is, or as doom and gloom as you think it is. It's usually somewhere in between. But I will say the one exception, it does feel like, is data center. Is really, that's not hype. They are investing that much money and really trying to break ground on that many projects. But I agree. I'm hearing the same thing from the ground floor on hydrogen, some projects shifting overseas to different markets, or, wherever the funding is. But good to hear that some of that's still coming through. Maybe one, since you've already touched on data centers and some of the other emerging sectors, I'd love to get your take on maybe nuclear as well. I know that's something that you and I have talked a little bit about. Is that anything that you guys are thinking about specifically too?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question, because we were going to kind of put it under the banner of power generation, but we kind of realize obviously the communities, there's quite a lot of independence from them, or specific challenges. Regulatory wise, it's far more rigorous for nuclear projects. And it's a more specific conference agenda. So tying gas and nuclear together might not make sense. So we're exploring now, and it's looking very positive to have a specific nuclear engineering construction stage, because even at a federal level, There's more kind of funding and initiatives to back nuclear projects currently. There's a lot of hype and excitement around nuclear SMRs, but there's also critically, a lot of challenges. The obvious one being, the lead time to develop these nuclear projects is quite, extensive, and the kind of baseload power that's needed for these data centers that we mentioned, they kind of need it often yesterday, not kind of an 8 to 9 year time, which creates some challenges for offtake ability for these nuclear projects that are announced. But saying that, I also think, the makeup of the market is kind of ripe for us as an area, as a conference to put together, because there's so much hype and excitement, but there's so many kind of missing pieces to put together, which is perfect for an event. So we're looking at kind of those nuclear projects, the interesting partnerships that have been forming. We've seen Google form partnerships with some nuclear companies. So again, it kind of comes back to, I know I mentioned Silicon Valley in Texas, but this is just energy and Silicon Valley, which is really kind of exciting. And a lot of the projects that are being backed by Silicon Valley, they are kind of more risky, more innovative projects. These players do have, good budgets for upscaling these nuclear plants. So in terms of who you want taking the risk and rolling the dice and accelerating these projects, they have that backing too. But it's been interesting, and workforce wise, also a very specific challenge for nuclear. The map development and training is very specific, and there's been so many dips and troughs in terms of the hype and excitement. And then the workforce accelerates, and then it kind of contracts. It seems though this is almost quite bipartisan, supported by the nuclear side of things. It's definitely an area we want to explore. So I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, from our perspective, where there's been a really large gap, at least in the capital project side of it, in putting up new plants, a bit of that muscle seems to have atrophied in the workforce. Of course, there's been continuous operations and, other maintenance and projects over the years, and one pretty large nuclear project in the last 20 years. But it's interesting from our perspective to see how you bridge that gap with technology, people coming from adjacent industries, but also having enough people with the knowledge of the NRC and licensing and the specific environments of nuclear to be able to really help to train up that next generation of nuclear workforce too.
Yeah, no, you must have a lot of really interesting insights on this. And anyone who's worked in kind of nuclear workforce development has really, seen how the sector has evolved very much. As I mentioned, the kind of cycles of, there's been projects announced and then a bit of a dry up, but it does seem like this is really going to take off. So I'm sure a lot of the nuclear project developers and owner operators and engineering firms around there are going to be putting some real resources in terms of training and development, probably widening those budgets as they're trying to attract more staff for these essential infrastructure projects.
Yep. Yeah, and I've seen some really cool AI companies. Like I was looking at this company, Nuclear, and that does some really interesting things using AI to become more efficient, not just with operations, but also just understanding the nuclear environment. So I know that's being applied across the whole power sector now, that, like you said, some of the tech and software platforms that you mentioned that are there. So I'd imagine that's a part of your audience too that you're going after.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Wherever there's kind of projects, as I said, we follow, and there's definitely more projects being announced and interesting partnerships forming.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe pivoting to the leadership and networking portion of what you guys are doing. I know that's a big part of the events space. For project leaders that are coming to the EPC show, what do you think the best way for them to maximize their experience would be?
Very good. Yeah, I think I know it's hard sometimes when people are always busy pre an event, but I always think it's really important to have a careful look at the schedule just to see obviously what sessions are kind of business critical for yourself, because I'm a producer, so I have a bias there. So I obviously want to make sure that the program's well looked at, and we did see some great engagement last year, and you saw people moving session to session, which is a good testament that we got the right people in the audience and the right topics, because people wanted to see, hey, what's going on in LNG for this challenge and then hydrogen on the other. So having that schedule plan on what's the critical sessions you want to attend. And obviously these speakers, we always encourage them to be around after, so they are accessible to kind of have conversations with and meetings. And the other area, and for us, it's super important, we do invite project owner operators and EPCs to come to the show with a free ticket. That's so that they can enjoy the content, but also they can engage with the supply chain. So for us, we often say to make the most of the event with the leaders is to, make the most of the networking apps that we have. The coffee breaks we make kind of long to make sure that people can have conversations, and it's just having that pre-planning is really important to see, who are those critical people you want to have a conversation with there on the networking app, doing the outreach, having conversation, and then just going from there. And then obviously we've got the networking parties and everything else at the end of day one, which is a really good way to kind of, in a relaxed way, have conversations, keep the networking going, and people often have the best memories that come from that. So I think a lot of it is just having that plan of who you want to see there, and meet there, and how to approach them to deliver your kind of goods or services and present that.
So do you have any success stories of where, whether it's OEMs and EPCs coming together, or just anything that you've seen come out of this event as far as rubber meeting the road with some of these things?
Yeah, we've had some really positive emails about some exciting conversations that kickstarted and came to fruition from the event. And we've had the kind of re-sign up rate from the exhibitors was crazy. I think it was like 84%, which is incredible. So we went from 200 exhibitors last year and sold out to 400 now. We're already kind of coming up to 60% sold out, and it's in June next year. So that's a testament of kind of all of the success of those conversations. I don't know how much more I can kind of probably share. I could probably put out some stats and add it into the comments. But yeah, we do have a testimonials page that I can kind of pass on, and it was really positive. We had a guy from Orion who said, that he had a full list of business cards that were gone by lunchtime of day one. So that was kind of a testament of like how hungry people are for the networking, and we kind of try and inject that messaging in our marketing messages, so that people come hungry to network and have those business meetings. Because that's, you don't want to be stuck at a booth kind of like twiddling with your thumbs or scrolling through TikTok, right? You want to be there networking. So we want to get people G'd up for that.
Yeah. Well, very good. So just maybe shifting quickly to the future outlook, one question I like to ask all of our guests is, what do you think maybe the most important project type or the biggest project type we'll see in the next 5-10 years could be? Curious what your opinion is. And then maybe just following that, any other shifts that you see coming for the U.S. energy market that our audience should be paying attention to from your perspective?
It's really interesting, because like to look into the future is always a challenge. I mean, a couple of years ago, I particularly on hydrogen, I thought, there would be the hubs funding. I thought that would just be absolutely kind of taking off right now, but that's taken often a bit of standstill, as I mentioned, or rolled back. In terms of crystal ball gazing, I think LNG export dominance will only increase and continue for America, which is super exciting. And you're seeing huge deals with the States and the EU and South Korea and other parts of the world in terms of gas purchasing. I think that's only going to continue, and if anything, accelerate. Then the other area that I think is going to be really interesting to look at over the next couple of years is what we touched upon with the data centers and nuclear, and how that kind of, those projects are coming together, off-grid projects, the models being taken, to accelerate those projects, how data centers are being more energy efficient as well, because that's going to be a bit of a challenge. And I'm sure there's probably incredible amount of research going into that, because it's in their own interest to be as less power hungry. But and just seeing how that AI and energy makeup will kind of continue to form or evolve, particularly with an AI kind of space race that people refer to now, with the states looking to obviously to lead. So how that will come to overall fruition, I think is going to be really interesting, and how the energy world kind of pivots to that, and providing a good, reliable baseload of power, and how that kind of decarbonizes as well. So that's an area that I'm very interested in. I don't know exactly how it'll look, but I think nuclear is going to have an important role to play in the next 10 years.
You're going to have a front row seat to all of it. So it's interesting. This is our fourth episode, and we've talked about robotics. We've talked about data architectures for AI. For this question, we've talked about transformer diagnostics. One thing that I always like to share is, we're doing all this innovative stuff to create new power generation, and the T&D to support bringing that power to the communities that are using it outside of just powering a data center, which continues to increase in demand as well. I think that's going to be an interesting sector to watch, because you still need to support the power lines. You still need the right of ways. You still need the constructors to know how to do that type of project. And it takes a long time, and, a lot of people working together. So I think that's going to be a pivotal project type too, is just the transmission of power, to these communities, and finding maybe less expensive or more innovative ways of doing that is going to be an interesting part of this equation too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, there's so many areas we could have touched upon, but yeah, that's obviously a key area, the grids and the bottlenecks there, because no accessibility, no project often. So the innovation already with microgrids and other areas is really exciting. So that's definitely a project area we want to be focusing on as well.
Yeah. So I want to thank you, Luke, for joining us today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Again, I know there's going to be many more, hopefully leading up to next edition. Looking forward to seeing you in Houston. Where can our audience find information if they want to sign up, if they want to just, talk to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you head over to our website, so www.epcshow.com, navigate that so you can find our contact us page. We're at the George R. Brown, June 16th, 17th, and we're really excited, obviously, to put this together and bring the communities that we serve together. It is the biggest projects conference, and we're only accelerating with 10,000 people who have rejected coming. Last year, we put down 3,000, and we ended up having 7,000 and 7,500 registrations and 5,000 attendees over the 2 days. So that's super exciting. We're opening up the free registration for exhibitors in the coming months and weeks, but do get in touch about an exhibition booth as well, because we're selling fast with those. So it'd be great to have those all wrapped up by Christmas. And thanks a lot, Luke, obviously, for the invitation and opportunity to speak with you today.
Excellent. Looking forward to sharing the episode with our audience. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.